He was lying on the floor when she found him, eyes half open, breathing shallow, his skin pale as paper. For a moment, she thought he was already gone. The mansion was silent except for the sound of rain beating against the windows. No one else was there. No one was coming to help. And she, a woman who had cleaned houses for 30 years, was about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous poison isn't found in dark alleys or crime scenes. Sometimes it's sitting right there on the bathroom counter. In a bottle, anyone can buy. Sometimes the person trying to kill you is the one you trust most. And sometimes, the only person who can save your life is the one you never even noticed was there. Before we go deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Lucas McDowell was exactly the kind of man you'd expect to live in a mansion. At 63 years old, this white American entrepreneur had built a healthcare technology company from nothing and sold it for a fortune most people couldn't even imagine. His home sat on 12 acres overlooking Lake Hartwell in South Carolina. White columns, manicured gardens, a circular driveway that could fit 20 cars. But Lucas wasn't the type to show off. He was quiet, thoughtful, maybe a little lonely. 2 failed marriages. No children. He'd been married to Sarah for 12 years before she left, saying he loved his work more than her. Then came Michelle, who lasted only 5 years before walking away. "You're not really here, even when you're here," she'd told him. Now, at 63, he understood what they meant. Families scattered across the country, visiting once or twice a year at most. Most nights, he ate dinner alone, staring out at the lake, wondering if this was all there was. But at least he had David. His business manager, David Kellerman, had worked with Lucas for nearly 8 years. He handled everything: finances, legal documents, appointments. David was the one constant in his life. Lucas trusted him completely. But in the spring of 2018, something began to change. Lucas started feeling off. Dizziness. Fatigue. His heart would race for no reason. Nausea that came in waves. At first, he brushed it off. Stress. Maybe. Age is catching up. But as weeks passed, it got worse. Much worse. But why was he getting sicker when he should have been fine? By early summer, Lucas could barely get out of bed. His vision would blur. His hands trembled. He'd lose balance walking from room to room. David drove him to the specialists. Cardiologists. Neurologists. They ran every test imaginable. Blood work. MRIs. EKGs. Everything came back normal. One doctor suggested anxiety. Another thought of vertigo. A third mentioned early Parkinson's. Though the symptoms didn't quite fit, Lucas tried medications, changed his diet, and started physical therapy. Nothing helped. The mansion that once felt like a sanctuary started to feel like a prison. David handled everything now. Emails, bills, decisions. Lucas signed whatever David put in front of him, too exhausted to read through every detail. Deep down, a darker thought was forming. What if he was dying? But what Lucas didn't know was that someone was watching. Someone was about to change everything. Amara Allison was 54 years old when she first stepped into Lucas McDowell's mansion. She wasn't supposed to be there. The regular housekeeper had quit suddenly. The cleaning agency sent Amara as a temporary replacement. This African-American woman had been cleaning houses for most of her adult life. She'd raised 2 kids on her own after her husband left when the kids were still in diapers. It hadn't been easy. There were nights she'd worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Mornings she'd gone without breakfast so her children could eat. But she'd done it. Her daughter was a teacher now. Her son worked in IT. And she had 3 grandchildren she adored more than anything in the world. Every Friday, she'd video call them, and they'd show her their drawings, their school projects, the gaps where they'd lost teeth. Those calls kept her going. Cleaning wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady. And Amara was good at it. Not just at cleaning, but at noticing things. Details. Patterns. The small things most people overlooked. When she walked in that first day, she noticed everything. Curtains drawn in every room, blocking out sunlight. Dust on furniture that should have been cleaned regularly. A strange, stale smell in the air. Like something chemical mixed with something rotten. Something felt wrong. David met her at the door that first morning. Clean-cut, well-dressed, early 40s. He looked at her the way people often looked at housekeepers, like she was invisible. "Mr. McDowell is very ill," David explained, his tone flat, emotionless. "He doesn't come down much anymore. Do not disturb him. Just do your work and leave." Amara nodded. She'd heard instructions like this before. But as she started cleaning, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not just with the house, but with the whole situation. Then she saw him, Lucas McDowell, coming down the stairs, gripping the railing with both hands, moving like a man 3 times his age. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. He looked like he hadn't eaten in weeks. Amara froze. She'd cared for her own mother through illness. Sat by her bedside during chemotherapy. Held her hand when the pain got too bad. She knew what sickness looked like. And this wasn't normal. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I'm fine," he said weakly. "Just tired." But he wasn't fine. Who was really taking care of this man? And why did David seem so calm about it? Over the next few weeks, she saw Lucas more often. Always weak. Always struggling. Sometimes he'd be sitting in the living room, staring at nothing. Other times she'd hear him coughing in another room. A deep, rattling cough that sounded painful. And every time she saw David, he seemed too calm. Too in control. He'd check in on Lucas, bring him water, remind him to stay hydrated. Always watching. Always there. But something about it didn't sit right with her. Then Amara found something that made her heart stop. It was a Tuesday morning in late July when Amara found the first clue. Cleaning the downstairs bathroom, she noticed a bottle of Visine eye drops on the counter. Nearly empty. And there were 3 more just like it in the cabinet under the sink. All empty or nearly empty. Amara paused. Why would someone go through so many bottles of eye drops? Lucas hadn't mentioned any eye problems. She'd never seen him use them. So why were there so many? What was David really doing with all these bottles? That afternoon, she overheard David on the phone. He was standing in the hallway, just out of sight, but his voice carried. "No. He's not getting better," David was saying, his tone cold, businesslike. "If anything, he's worse." "Yeah, I know. I'm handling it. Just give it time." Amara's heart skipped. Handling what? Giving what time? She stayed quiet, pretending she hadn't heard anything. David ended the call and walked past her without a word, heading upstairs to check on Lucas. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her grandchildren. About how fragile life was. About how sometimes bad things happen to good people, and nobody noticed until it was too late. She thought about Lucas. Alone in that big house. Trusting the wrong person. But she wasn't ready for what she was about to discover. She started paying closer attention. David always brought Lucas his water. Always. He'd insist Lucas stay hydrated, pouring him glass after glass throughout the day. And Lucas would drink it without question. Trusting David completely, Amara noticed something else. Lucas's symptoms seemed worse after David had been there. On days when David was away on business, Lucas seemed slightly better, not healthy, but not as bad. It was subtle, but it was there. Then she found the notebook, tucked between books in Lucas's office. She shouldn't have looked. She knew that, but something made her pull it out. Inside were handwritten notes. David's handwriting. Dates. Times. Dosages. The word Visine appeared multiple times. And next to it, notes about Lucas's condition. Increased dose. Subject showing signs of distress. Heart rate elevated. Mobility decreasing. Amara's hands started shaking. Subject. Not Lucas. Not Mr. McDowell. Subject. Like he was an experiment. Like he was just a thing to be studied. David wasn't trying to help Lucas. He was poisoning him. But what Amara found next changed everything. That night, she went online and searched for information about Visine poisoning. What she found made her blood run cold. Tetrahydrozoline. That's the chemical in eye drops. When ingested, it targets the central nervous system. It can slow your heart rate, drop your blood pressure, suppress your breathing. In high doses, it can kill you. And because it's tasteless and odorless, the victim never knows it's there. The perfect poison, hidden in plain sight. Amara read case after case. A woman who poisoned her boyfriend. A wife who killed her husband. A paramedic who poisoned his wife the same way. The symptoms were always the same. Fatigue. Dizziness. Nausea. Heart problems. The victim would get progressively weaker. Their body slowly shutting down. While doctors searched for answers that weren't there. Amara felt sick. She thought about Lucas, lying in bed upstairs. Too weak to walk. Too confused to understand what was happening to him. She thought about David, moving through the house with that calm, controlled demeanor, playing the role of the devoted assistant while slowly killing the man who trusted him. But why? Why would David do this? The answer came to her quickly. Money. Lucas had millions. And if Lucas died, with David in control of his affairs, David would have access to everything. Lucas was the perfect victim. Isolated. No close family. No spouse. No children. Nobody is paying attention. Nobody except Amara. If this part is making sense, drop a comment with "I'm still here," and let's see who's really watching to this point. Amara knew she needed concrete proof. If she went to the police with nothing but empty bottles and a notebook, would they even believe her? She was a cleaning lady. David was a respected business manager. Who would they trust? And if David found out she suspected something, what would he do? Would she become his next victim? She thought about her grandchildren, about never seeing them again, about the risk she was taking. But she thought about Lucas, too, about how he'd looked at her that day on the stairs, so weak he could barely stand. She couldn't just walk away. She started documenting everything, taking pictures with her phone when no one was looking. Empty Visine bottles. One page of the notebook. She noted dates and times of David's visits. When Lucas's symptoms worsened, she was building a case, piece by piece. But she knew it wasn't enough yet. She needed proof. Concrete. Undeniable proof. Then, one afternoon, she got it. She was cleaning the kitchen when David came downstairs. He didn't see her at first. She was behind the pantry door, putting away supplies. He walked to the refrigerator, pulled out a pitcher of filtered water, and set it on the counter. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bottle. Visine. Amara held her breath, watching through the crack in the door. Her heart was pounding so loud she was sure he'd hear it. David unscrewed the cap. He tilted the bottle over the pitcher. And he squeezed. Once. Twice. 3 times. 4. 5. He kept squeezing until the bottle was empty. Then he shook the pitcher gently, mixing it in, and put it back in the refrigerator. He threw the empty bottle in the trash, washed his hands, and walked out of the kitchen like nothing had happened. Like he'd just made a cup of coffee. Like he hadn't just put poison in another man's water. Asterisk asterisk. Then something happened that made her heart stop. Asterisk asterisk. Amara waited until she heard him go upstairs. Then she moved. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She filmed the pitcher in the refrigerator. Then she went to the trash and filmed the empty Visine bottle. She had it. She had proof. But now what? That night, Amara barely slept. She kept replaying the moment in her mind. Seeing David squeeze that poison into the water. Seeing how calmly he'd done it. Like it was routine. Like he'd done it 100 times before. She thought about Lucas drinking that water tomorrow morning, unknowingly swallowing the very thing that was killing him. She thought about how many times David had done this. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? How much time did Lucas have left? And then she made a decision. She couldn't wait for the police. She couldn't wait for evidence to pile up. Lucas was running out of time. She had to act now, even if it meant risking everything. The next morning, Amara arrived early. Just her and Lucas. David wouldn't be there until later. She found Lucas in the living room, sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at the lake. He looked worse than ever. His skin had a grayish tint. His breathing was labored. Amara's throat tightened. She thought about her own mother. How she'd waited too long to get help. How she'd always regretted not acting sooner. She wouldn't make that mistake again. "Mr. McDowell," she said softly, kneeling beside his chair so they were at eye level. "I need to talk to you about something important. It's going to be hard to hear. But I need you to trust me." He turned slowly, his eyes taking a moment to focus on her. "What is it?" he whispered. Amara took a deep breath. "You're not sick, Mr. McDowell. You're being poisoned. David has been putting something in your water. In your drinks. That's why the doctors can't figure out what's wrong. It's not a disease. It's poison." For a long moment, Lucas just stared at her. His face went through a series of emotions. Confusion. Disbelief. Shock. Then he shook his head slowly. "No," he said, his voice cracking. "That's impossible. David would never. He's been helping me. He's the only one who's been here for me." "I know it sounds crazy," Amara said, her voice urgent. "But I've seen him do it, yesterday. I watched him pour poison into your water. I have it on video." She pulled out her phone and showed him. Lucas watched the footage. His eyes widening. He saw David. The Visine bottle. The pitcher. His hands started shaking. Not from the poison this time. From shock. From betrayal. "Why would he do that?" he asked, tears sliding down his cheeks. Amara's heart broke for him. "I think it's about money," she said gently. "If you die, he controls everything. He's been handling all your affairs. He has access to everything." Lucas closed his eyes. Tears streamed down his face. "I trusted him," he whispered. "After my marriages fell apart, after my family stopped calling, I thought David was the one person who cared. But who could he really trust now?" "I know," Amara said, placing her hand on his. But right now, we need to focus on getting you help. We need to call the police. We need to get you to a hospital. They need to test your blood." Lucas nodded slowly, trying to process everything. "Okay," he said. "Okay." Amara dialed 911 and put it on speaker. 911. "What's your emergency?" "My name is Lucas McDowell," he said, his voice weak but determined. "I'm at 3847 Lakeshore Drive. I've been poisoned. I need help." Within minutes, sirens filled the air. Police cars. An ambulance. Officers rushed into the house. Amara showed them everything. The videos. The empty bottles. The notebook. They collected the water from the refrigerator as evidence. They took Lucas's statement. And then they asked where David was. "He's supposed to be here within the hour," Amara said. "Checking the time." "Good," one of the officers said. "We'll wait for him." Lucas was loaded into an ambulance. An IV already in his arm. As they wheeled him out, he reached for Amara's hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were full of tears. "Thank you," he said. "You saved my life." Amara squeezed his hand. "You're going to be okay now." But was David about to walk into a trap? David arrived at exactly 10:30 in the morning, just like he did every day. He pulled his car into the circular driveway. Completely unaware that 3 police cars were waiting inside, he walked through the front door carrying his briefcase, already pulling out his phone to check messages. The moment he stepped inside, 2 officers moved toward him. "David Kellerman?" David looked up, startled. "Yes. What's going on? Where's Lucas?" "Mr. McDowell is on his way to the hospital," the officer said. "And you're under arrest for attempted murder." The color drained from David's face. For the first time since Amara had known him, he looked panicked, uncertain. "Caught? What? This is insane. I haven't done anything. I've been taking care of him." "You've been poisoning him," the officer said. "We have evidence. We have video footage. We have a confession from Mr. McDowell. And we have your notebook documenting everything you've been doing." David's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. The officers handcuffed him. "Read him his rights." David kept shaking his head, muttering that it was a mistake, that they didn't understand, but no one was listening anymore. As they led him out of the house, he looked back and saw Amara standing in the hallway. Their eyes met. And in that moment, David knew. He knew she was the one who had figured it out. He knew she was the one who had stopped him. But what would happen next? The investigation moved quickly after that. Lucas's blood was tested at the hospital. The results came back positive for lethal levels of tetrahydrozoline, enough to kill him if it had continued much longer. The doctors said another week, maybe 2, and he would have been gone. His organs were already starting to fail. His heart was struggling. His kidneys were damaged. But he would survive. With treatment, with time, he would recover. Police searched David's home and found more evidence. Financial documents showed he'd already started transferring money from Lucas's accounts into offshore holdings. A forged will naming David as the primary beneficiary. Records showed he'd been researching tetrahydrozoline poisoning for months before he started using it. He'd planned this. Carefully. Methodically. He'd been poisoning Lucas slowly, waiting for his body to give out, waiting for the right moment to take control of everything. What was David hiding in his past? If Elena hadn't noticed, if she hadn't cared, if she hadn't been brave enough to act, Lucas McDowell would be dead, and David Kellerman would have gotten away with it. David was charged with attempted murder, fraud, forgery, and a dozen other crimes. He pleaded not guilty at first, claiming Lucas was paranoid, that the housekeeper had fabricated evidence. But the evidence was overwhelming. The videos, the notebook, the blood tests, the financial records. He eventually took a plea deal. Life in prison in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. At the sentencing hearing, Lucas appeared in court. He was still weak, still recovering, but he was alive. He looked at David across the courtroom, the man he had trusted for 8 years, the man who had tried to kill him. "I keep asking myself why," Lucas said, his voice steady. "Was it just the money? Did you hate me that much?" David didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. His face blank. Cold. The judge sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole. As the officers led him away, Lucas turned to Amara, who was sitting in the back of the courtroom. She hadn't wanted to be there, but Lucas insisted. "I needed her to see this," Lucas said later. "I needed her to know that what she did mattered." Lucas spent 3 weeks in the hospital. The first week was critical. His body was in shock. But slowly, day by day, he got stronger. The color returned to his face. His breathing steadied. He could walk without help. He could think clearly again. The fog that had clouded his mind for months finally lifted. Amara visited him twice. The first time, she brought flowers and a card signed by her grandchildren. They talked for hours. About her life, her family, her years of experience cleaning houses. About how she'd almost ignored her instincts. I kept thinking, who am I to accuse someone? Amara said. I'm just the cleaning lady. What if I was wrong? But you weren't wrong, Lucas said. You were right. And you saved my life. But what Lucas did next left Amara speechless. The second time she visited, Lucas was sitting up in bed, looking more like himself. He had a lawyer with him. Amara, Lucas said. I wanted you here for this. He handed her a folder. Amara's hands trembled as she read through them. Legal documents. Lucas was gifting her a house. A small, beautiful house on 2 acres of land. Paid in full. No mortgage. No strings attached. He was also setting up a trust fund for her grandchildren. Enough to pay for their education. Enough to give them a future. And he was giving her a yearly stipend that would allow her to retire immediately if she wanted. Mr. McDowell, I can't accept this, Amara said, tears streaming down her face. It's too much. I just did what anyone would do. No, Lucas said firmly. Most people wouldn't have done anything. Most people would have looked the other way. You risked your life to save mine. You barely knew me. But you did it anyway. He leaned forward. His eyes sincere. This isn't charity, Amara. This is gratitude. This is me trying to give you a fraction of what you gave me, a chance at a better life. Amara broke down completely. Lucas reached out and took her hand. You saved my life, he said quietly. The least I can do is change yours. How would you feel if someone you trusted for years was slowly killing you? Drop a comment and let us know your thoughts on this story. Lucas moved out of the mansion. He couldn't stay there anymore. Too many memories. Too much darkness. He sold the estate and bought a smaller, simpler home closer to town. Closer to people. He reconnected with his sister. Started seeing his nephews more often. Began building the relationships he'd neglected for so long. He also started a foundation in Amara's name. The Amara Allison Foundation for Domestic Worker Advocacy. It provided legal assistance, health care, and education resources for housekeepers, nannies, and caregivers who often worked in vulnerable positions. Workers who saw things but didn't know how to speak up. Workers who needed protection and support. Amara retired from cleaning houses. She spent her days with her grandchildren, volunteering at her church, and occasionally speaking at events for the foundation. She never sought fame or attention, but people wanted to hear her story. The case became national news. It prompted changes in how toxicology screenings were conducted. The FDA issued warnings about the dangers of ingesting eye drops. Lives were saved because Amara had been brave enough to speak up. Asterisk asterisk, this story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Asterisk asterisk. How many people are suffering right now, being poisoned by someone they trust? How many unexplained illnesses are actually crimes? The truth is, we don't know. The scariest part? The people who do this are often the ones we trust most. Spouses, partners, caregivers, family members, business associates, people who have access to our food, our drinks, our daily routines, people who know we won't suspect them. Asterisk asterisk, what would you do if you were in Amara's position? Asterisk asterisk, would you speak up? Even with no proof? Even if you risked your job or safety? Drop a comment and tell us honestly. Amara didn't have money, power, or status. All she had was a conscience that wouldn't let her look away. And sometimes, that's enough. Pay attention to the people around you. To the signs that something is wrong. To the quiet voice inside that tells you something isn't right. If you see something, say something. Because being wrong is embarrassing. But being silent when someone is dying? That's something you can never take back. Lucas McDowell is 70 now. He lives in Charleston. Surrounded by family. His health has fully recovered. Amara Allison is 61. She lives in the house Lucas gave her. 10 minutes from her grandchildren. She gardens. She cooks. She babysits. She volunteers. She lives the quiet, peaceful life she always dreamed of. David Kellerman is serving life without parole in a maximum security prison. He has never spoken publicly about the case. He has never apologized. And every year on the anniversary of Lucas's near death, Amara lights a candle. Not for the man who tried to kill him, but for the man who survived. For the second chance they both got. For the reminder that sometimes, the smallest voice can save the loudest life. Because in the end, this isn't just a story about poison or betrayal or wealth. It's a story about the power of paying attention. The courage to act. And the truth is that sometimes, the person who saves your life is the one you never saw coming. Thanks for watching. You might probably not see our videos again. So hit the subscribe button so you can be notified anytime we drop a new video. See you at the next one.